Hi, welcome back to Keep It Dirty, a podcast where my guests share their life living functionally and sustainably and their why behind their experiences navigating through our ever-changing environment. I am your host, Leslie Dowling. I'm a corporate speaker passionate about creating optimal performance in the workplace, which will have a direct effect on an increase in revenue and productivity through restorative health techniques. And today it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Christinebishara. She is an integrative medical doctor based in New York City, and she consults with patients worldwide. Her approach focuses on healing the body by optimizing its natural abilities. She has discovered that all health starts in the gut and that the gut is the key to weight management, immune health, and mental health. Dr. Bishara's pioneering research linked COVID severity to deficiencies in beneficial gut bacteria. Her findings explain why children naturally have higher levels of these beneficial bacteria and are protected from severe infections. The gut revolution brings together all she has learned in her 30 years of practicing medicine and summarizes it in a simple, actionable steps that will allow you to achieve optimal health. So it is a pleasure to have you on. I'm really enjoying your book. It was the #1 international bestseller, The Gut Revolution. How are you doing today?
Hi, thanks so much for having me on.
Well, I would love to start with, and I ask all my guests, what was really the catalyst to what you're doing today?
Believe it or not, it started years ago when I was a teenager, and I think this is the case for a lot of people who become passionate about what they do in life. I was an obese teenager who just wanted to lose weight and fit in, and I really wasn't able to follow the diets that were out there, so I kind of created my own with healthy eating, mostly plant based, a little bit of everything else. And fasting, which at the time in the 80s wasn't really a thing even. And I found that I lost weight a lot more significantly than I had been. And I wasn't even starving myself. I was eating more, just healthier foods and fasting. So my goal, even through medical school, was to really help people identify the things that are in their body that kind of limit their ability to feel their best. And when I started traditional internal medicine in residency and then practicing as an attending, I got a little bit frustrated because, yes, we're helping our patients, but we're not really digging to the root core of what the issues are that are causing people to get sick. And so I left traditional internal medicine about 6 years ago. And I decided to open my own wellness practice and just teach people again, teach them about their body, how their body functions, and what to do to help their body function at its best. And so that's really also where the book came from, is the things that came easily to me and that I thought was common knowledge really wasn't. And so my goal was to teach everyone about healthy eating and how the gut works and how it affects our weight, it affects our mental health, everything that you read. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the way that you really just have beautifully laid out the information, really in layman's terms, that you really just take it and pick it apart, but present it in a way that we all get it. And the charts that you have just reinforcing protocols for better gut health. And I was just, I was, as a functional health practitioner, I find, it boggles my brain when it's like people are just not connecting the dots when it comes to what they're putting in their mouths and how compromised our society is. So how do you think we got to this point with our society being so compromised with gut health?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, and I agree with you. And I think we've become a society of quick fixes. This is what we've been told. And so also, I think we're all very overworked. I mean, if you look at European countries and other countries, they relax. They take time in the afternoon to rest and see family and eat lunch. And I think in America, yes, we do have that very driven and competitive workforce, and it's good. But I also feel like we don't make enough time for ourselves, and we're forced to now have literally like minimal time in the evening to spend time with family and eat a proper meal. And we're always on the go. So I think we've just become this quick fix, quick meals on the go. If it doesn't, if it doesn't hurt, if it hurts, take a medication for it. And I think we've gotten to the point where we're not really listening to our bodies anymore. We're kind of numbing whatever our body's telling us by taking medications and just quick, whatever fix we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that needs to change. And I think the food quality needs to change too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just know from personal experience with my one of my sons. He, he went to an MD, and they're like, oh well, take this.
Yeah.
Not like getting to like, let's connect the dots. Let's sit down. Let's talk about stressors in your life. It's like a whole wheelhouse of really the passages of time, of from birth to your current age. And that's the way that I was, taught through schooling with questions. And so we found a DO, we found somebody that really works functionally, where he lives in Tampa. And they took over an hour of asking him questions. He was just blown away. And he was
Mhm.
just like, thank you, Mom, because now I feel like there's somebody that's really hearing me, and it's not just masking things that are happening. Um,
Yeah.
and they don't ask, are there stressors in your life, relationships, work, because that has a profound effect on us on so many different levels. So
Yeah.
maybe you could share a little bit about, that part of functional health.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. And I have a similar philosophy. So I do, sometimes it goes even over an hour, a wellness evaluation. And I ask questions like, were you breastfed as a baby? And a lot of times they're surprised, why are you asking me that question? But it does make a difference. We know that the gut microbiome starts even in utero, believe it or not. So what our mom ate even makes a difference. And I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my mid 50s, and we were that generation where formula had just started coming out, and moms were told that formula is healthier. And so a lot of us have gut issues because we don't have as strong of a microbiome as we should. And I'm not discouraging anyone from using formula. If you're a mom listening to this, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we know that there are qualities in breast milk that support our microbiome. And that's why it is so important. So if you're able to, definitely breastfeed. But there's so many little things that we as traditional physicians don't really get a chance to ask. And I'm not blaming physicians, because we're part of this wheel, right? And we're kind of just like running on the wheel and trying to get things done. And I experienced it. I mean, you have to click off all these things, check mark, check mark, check mark, and you're not talking to your patients about nutrition at all. And for me, it was so important that I just said, I can't do this anymore. I really want to just focus on healing from within, which is the name of my practice, From Within Medical. Because I think, it sounds cliche, but I think it really is. Our bodies are very amazing healers. We just haven't given them the opportunity to tell us what's going on. So we numb everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, can people, I guess, uh, have virtual, uh, you know, uh, appointments with you, or do you really stress coming in? Say if you live far away, but if people want to work with you.
Yeah,
Um,
I actually just do virtuals
oh,
because
okay.
yes, I am trained in internal medicine, but I don't want you coming to me as your internal medicine doctor, because I don't want to replace that doctor. I just want to add to
Mhm.
whatever they're doing as well, because the screeners are very important, colonoscopies and all of those things.
Yeah.
But I really do more of a holistic approach and kind of dig into what nutritional problems you're having, deficiencies, things like that, gut issues. So we really focus on that in addition to what people are doing with their primary physicians.
Oh, I love that. And I guess for gut health, just having that happy gut, and creating a balance to really try to avoid dysbiosis. Somebody that's really new to starting this new way of lifestyle. What are some of the tips and tools? I guess to read your book, but to really get you into a state of awareness. But what would you recommend? Some of the tips.
I say start slowly. I don't want anybody to feel overwhelmed. So my big thing is, I think first and foremost, increasing your plant-based foods. So if you're eating just one vegetable a day, increase it slowly. I mean, we're seeing studies that show that 5 to 7 servings are actually what we need.
Mm.
And the reason why we need that is because they have fibers that we can't digest, but they feed our bacteria, our beneficial bacteria. So we're not really eating for us, we're eating for them. So we eat mostly for them and then a little bit of what we want, which is what I say, like eat for yourself too. So that would be the first thing. Just slowly start to increase your plant-based foods. The second thing is restrict your eating times because it really does make a difference. Our bodies are made for rest and digest. Our guts are also made to digest, and then they have other functions. So if we're constantly eating, and I think I hate to say it, but a few years ago, a nutritionist came out and said 6 small meals a day is really the best. But I disagree with that because I feel like we're constantly working our gut, right? It's constantly digesting, processing nutrients all day long, and it doesn't have time for other functions. So restrict your eating times, even if it's just 12 hours a day, and then you rest your gut for another 12 hours. That helps as well. If you can optimize it, then you really should be eating during a 6 to 8 hour window because that again allows your gut to work on other functions. So those are really two simple things that I think anyone can incorporate. Just increase your plants and restrict your eating times. So those in their own kind of start the cascade of improved health.
Mm. That's interesting. Yeah. And I loved what you were talking about, just backtracking a little about just trying to educate people about, how are you birthed into this world? And I was trying to explain that to my family about, you need those secretions and everything that if you're birthed naturally, all from, it kind of helps and protects you and builds your immune system compared to, and you could, further validate this. If you came into this world, my mother had 2 C-sections with my brother and we had allergies and we were quite compromised as babies. And I didn't realize that, or what birth number are you? Your
Yeah.
mother, as you produce more kids, if you're number 4 in the chain of the youngest sibling, I guess, and it makes sense that the mother doesn't have that strong immune system compared to the first child, which was really quite interesting.
Yeah, and I always wonder about that. Is it just the mom's diet gets a little worse with, like 3 little ones
Yeah.
running around and she just doesn't have time to make a healthy meal and she's just eating a little bit, not as healthy. But I definitely agree with you. It does make a difference. We've seen studies on babies who are born via cesarean section. And actually, it was part of our study that we did during COVID, where we found that children with a much higher level of bifidobacterium, which is a beneficial bacteria that they're kind of born with, it's nature's way of gifting them a robust immune system when they're young until they develop an adaptive immune system. And we've seen studies where babies born via cesarean section had lower bifidobacterium levels than babies born vaginally. And
Mm.
part of that is exactly what you said. When we're birthed through our mom's vaginal canal, that has all these beneficial bacteria. And those actually help with, those are like the first, immune boost that we get. And even now we're starting to avoid giving babies a bath for the first 24 hours because we're
Oh,
seeing also because those bacteria that are present on the skin, they're actually good for us.
yeah.
So why wash them off right away? So those are two things that we're starting to see that are really important for the gut. And you're right, babies who are born via cesarean section do have a little bit more increased risk of obesity and allergies, and not as strong of an immune system. And sometimes, obviously, it's inevitable to have a baby. But if you are aware of what's going on, then you can take other measures to make sure that your baby is at least primed with a better immune system, like breastfeeding, for example,
Hmm.
or just making sure that you're eating healthy and breastfeeding them properly. So there's little things that we can do. Some things are out of our control, obviously,
Yeah.
but
I wish I would have known these things when I first started the journey of having kids. But
yeah.
the other question is, I guess, for people that are thinking of starting a family, I don't know how involved like with the cell phones and just things that I know about 5G towers, and it does. studies show that it does affect us on a cellular level, and with all of the devices that we wear, um, and just from the toxins that we didn't have even 25 years ago. I know that people are having issues with, trying to conceive. And so, what are the things like? Do you share with your patients to detox for several months before starting to try to detox? Obviously, the microplastics. I don't think it takes. I don't know if you could ever really rid yourself of that. Yeah, from your
Yeah,
system.
they're forever chemicals, right? I am also a big believer, however, that our bodies are pretty resilient and we are capable of healing. But if we're constantly insulting them, our bodies, that is, with these things in the environment, then they're not going to heal. But, little things like, eat organic, certain things like the Dirty Dozen, for example, which is that list that everybody knows, hopefully. You don't have to have everything organic, but that's a really good start. Limiting your alcohol intake because alcohol can damage the gut microbiome. Little things like that can definitely help. But you're right. I don't. I I try not to do like scare tactics where I'm like avoid this, and this because we're humans and we can't live in a bubble. But don't microwave plastics, for example. Little things like that. And I think if we eat enough of the healthy foods that have the antioxidants and the nutrients that we need, then it kind of overpowers some of the maybe unhealthy habits that we have. And we see this perfectly in people who live in the blue zones, for example. You know the blue zones, right? The five areas in the world. Yeah, the five areas in the world where they have the highest number of people who live to be 100.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, they do eat healthy. They eat a lot of plant-based foods and a little bit of animal protein, not a lot, but their social connections are very strong, is what they've seen, and that makes a huge impact. And ironically, they do drink a lot of alcohol in the blue zones, and we
Yeah.
see that alcohol, right? Alcohol. So here's the thing: alcohol with a really poor diet, and no social connections is bad, but in the blue zones, they do drink moderate amounts of alcohol and it doesn't seem to affect them. And I personally think it's because of the fact that they eat so healthy, they're much more active and they're socially connected. So those factors really kind of compensate for the fact that maybe the alcohol is not as good for the gut microbiome. So it's everything in moderation. And I really think that's what is more important.
Yeah, I like that because I know sometimes I get so passionate, and when I lecture to people, and I kind of have to rein it in because I don't want to like freak
Yeah,
them out. This has
right.
been a journey of how many years of just learning, educating, trying to figure out what is a good way of just what my protocols are and what I instill at home and with my family.
Yeah.
So
Like meet everybody where they are, right? And then start
yeah,
from there.
yeah,
Yeah.
because we're so bio-individual, as we well know.
Yes.
And now, obviously, I'm not an MD, but I'd love to know: do you see that the functional health, the brain gut health, is that slowly being integrated into schooling? I mean, I wonder how many hours do MDs get of that, or none? Just
Well, yeah, I don't know the current medical school status, but I think up until maybe 5 years ago, we were
yeah,
not getting any of that. I mean,
wow.
we no nutritional courses at all. And most of the MDs and DOs that I know who practice from a more integrative side have taken extra training to
Mm,
do that.
mhm.
Do I hope that that changes? Absolutely. I think a lot of DOs are now starting to, and I think the DO schools, their concept is obviously mind body connection. So they're starting to, but I think a lot of MDs are also starting to see that as a nation, we really aren't that healthy. I mean, COVID was kind of a wake up call. We saw that a lot of people didn't really do well on COVID, probably worse than some third world countries. I think Africa did better than we did, sub-Saharan Africa. And so I think we're starting to wake up. I think functional medicine is a very growing field right now. And I think gut health is really also starting to get a little bit more interest. And
Mhm.
hopefully we'll have more research studies that show the importance of the gut. I mean, I quote many in my book because as much as I wanted my book to be an easy read, I also didn't want to diminish the fact that I'm an MD and there is science behind this.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's very easy to understand, but there is science in there and it's backed up by research, because I think ultimately, right, this is what we want. We don't want just somebody's opinion.
Sure.
So I think a lot of research now is starting to show how important gut health is for our overall health.
And I notice now there are, some of the dyes that are going to be taken out of a lot of the products that, are kid friendly, the cereals and the dyes and chemicals in the shampoos. And also our skin is our largest organ. So we're ingesting that too. I'm hoping that, in the European countries, hundreds of these are taken off the packaged products off the shelves of the stores, the supermarkets, which we still
I
can,
see
you
that.
know. So, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
I would say be vigilant, because, like you said, in Europe, like red 40 is banned there. So even if you look at the candy, and like when you go to Europe, like the pinks and the reds are a little bit different colored because they're not allowed to use red 40. And so here we do have red 40, but thankfully it's being banned. But then I say be mindful, because other things now are being added to products to make them red. For example, red beetle, which is not even called red beetle in the ingredients. It's called carmine. So who would know that carmine listed on your yogurt or your Starbucks Frappuccino, like the strawberry Frappuccino, has carmine? A
Mm,
lot of products with the red coloring have carmine in it. And yes, okay, maybe some people don't mind eating bugs, but it's also an allergen. So you have to be very mindful of what you read. I tell my patients, you know what, make your own yogurt. Get a yogurt machine. It's
mm,
$30. Just make your own yogurt. If there are ways that you can kind of be a little bit more mindful, then do it. But again, we don't want to scare everyone and overwhelm everyone, but just be mindful that there are things out there that, like if the red 40 is banned, well, look for other things. So
yeah,
I don't know why they don't use beet juice, for example, uh, or blueberry juice for blue things. I don't know.
right. Yeah, maybe someday. But and there are,
Yeah.
like you said, there's so many varieties and options and things that you could switch out when you bake that are healthy, which is a
Yeah.
great thing. Um, and the other question, I guess, is maybe you could explain to the viewers and the listeners what, when it comes to organic versus non-organic. I get that a lot. Well, I don't have, my budget does not allow me to, with why can't I eat? What's the difference between organic and how is that going to affect me? How do you approach that?
Yeah. And again, I know people don't have a ton of money to spend on food. I mean, we live in an economy right now that's a little bit tough, but you don't have to eat everything organic. So anything that has a shell on it, that's how I say, like avocados, bananas, oranges, anything that has a thick covering, you're
Yeah.
probably okay. I mean, it might seep a little bit in there, and we're worried about pesticides, right? And that's really what the difference is between organic and non-organic. But just look at the dirty dozen list and the clean 15, go from there. There are certain foods that you should eat organic and make those choices. But if you can't get organic everything, it's okay. Fruits, for example, like berries, they're notoriously known for having higher pesticide levels just because they're on the ground and they're being sprayed. But you can soak those in baking soda for 15 minutes.
Mm,
And there have been studies that show that baking soda removes up to 95% of pesticides.
wow.
Yes, if it's soaked in 15 minutes and then you rinse it off. So that's something that you can do if you're not able to buy organic. So there are little things, and I mentioned those in the book. Again,
Yeah.
my goal is not fear mongering. It's more about start where you are, slowly start to improve your health. One day at a time, increase it gently, and you'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I remember reading that with the baking soda and I thought, oh, what a great idea. Cause there's sprays and things that you get, but baking soda is, I think, definitely the way to go. And
Yeah.
how have you seen the progression or just the way that everything has evolved from when you first started your practice to now? What are some of the things or that you could share with everybody?
Yeah. It's interesting because I opened my wellness practice just before COVID hit. And it it's strange because I don't think uh mainstream wise a holistic healing was as prevalent as it is now. And I think really COVID was a huge wake up call for a lot of people. And so before that, I would always get questions like, okay, well, how are you different from my primary care doctor? Because my primary care doctor can do everything that you're doing and it's covered by insurance. And I would say, not really. But
Mhm.
it was almost like I had to kind of explain and fight for what I'm telling them.
Sure.
But now people are starting to become more aware of natural healing and integrative medicine. So that's definitely become a little bit easier. I personally think that the gut holds the key to so much more, especially to mental health, which we didn't really touch upon.
Yeah.
But we're making these neurotransmitters. A lot of them have precursors that are proteins found in certain foods, fruits and vegetables. And some of these proteins our body isn't even able to make. So we have to obtain them from the food that we eat. And if we're not eating the right food because we're in a rush, we're not, planning and eating things that we should be eating, we're going to deplete our body of those amino acids that are important building blocks. And we're not going to make serotonin or dopamine, for example. And
Hmm.
then our mental health is going to suffer. And you mentioned it earlier, stress plays a big role, especially childhood stress, which
Yeah.
we now see actually changes our DNA. And chronic stress will cause definite shifts in the DNA, and that's going to lead to increased risk of cancer and other metabolic illnesses. So I think we've become, thankfully, more open to
Hmm.
other options, and it's great to see that. And I even see it among my colleagues, a lot of MDs who kind of laughed at us early on in the pandemic when we were talking about how important the gut was for COVID. And we were telling everyone, please take a probiotic containing this important bacteria because it is protective. It literally works on the same immune pathways that COVID was affecting and downregulated them. And
That's
this is why
amazing.
children didn't really get sick because they have so much of it. And I remember thinking, and a lot of my colleagues would say, it can't be that simple. And we were like, it really is. It really is that simple. Your gut holds the key to a lot of things. So I think people now are very open to it. And a lot of my colleagues are now talking about the gut, talking about bacteria in the gut, and it's refreshing to see. So
Yeah.
hopefully we're on a good trend.
I think you're absolutely right, because we were just, everybody was in that same situation, and it's sort of like, okay, oh, what are other things, other options that we might have? Uh and like you said, that the brain gut health, there, our circadian rhythms were all set. We weren't on that same, like epigenetically, where you get up in the morning, generations of going to work, the kids go to school, all of a sudden it was like, wow. And kids
Changed.
were eating not as healthy, getting to bed later, mentally just having the stimulation of sugar late at night, not being able to sleep. So, you know, maybe you could share a little bit about what kind of research are they showing now with like long haulers or people that
Mhm.
might still be affected from what we went through a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, in some studies, they're showing a lot of patients with long COVID symptoms actually still have a gut dysbiosis, and this might be contributing. I personally also think it's still just a deficiency of these
Oh,
beneficial bacteria that we need because they do regulate immune pathways.
yeah.
So I think a lot of patients who have long COVID should really get gut evaluations, get a gut test, look at the levels of your beneficial bacteria, and then from there you can work on increasing them.
Hmm.
That's a big one. You were talking about the effect on kids and circadian rhythm. Well, we know that people who work at night actually are more prone to metabolic conditions like diabetes, for example, and high
Yeah.
blood pressure. Just the fact that they work and stay up at night and sleep during the day puts people at risk. So you said it with the circadian rhythm. We're meant to wake up with sunlight and be active during the day and sleep at night. They've also done studies on children who spend time outdoors and how spending time outdoors affects our microbiome and actually increases the levels of beneficial bacteria, which we don't really do with kids anymore.
Yeah.
They're in school all day long. Back in the day, we had kids that would go out to recess for a while. I think it was like a half hour to an hour, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And
sure.
now a lot of kids aren't even getting that. And we're keeping them indoors a lot. And I think that makes a big difference too, because we have these, believe it or not, these substances that we inhale from trees that are surrounding us. called phytoncides, and they help to build our immune system. They help with building up of T killer cells, which are really important parts of our immune system. So, all these factors that we're ignoring and thinking that they're not so important, but they really are very important.
Yeah,
So we need to go back to ancient wisdom.
I love that. I absolutely believe in that too, and grounding. And um,
Yes.
can you share with people, because there's so much study and science behind just getting out there and walking, say on the beach or just in the spring and summer, and just feeling the dirt underneath your feet.
Yes.
So doesn't that also release endorphins that feel good? Maybe you could share with people
Yes.
why we should get out there and ground.
Absolutely. I love that. You're right. The soil has all these amazing minerals in it that we absorb through our body. And one of those are those phytoncides that we talked about. But you mentioned the beach. When you go to the beach, you're actually inhaling iodine.
Mm,
Iodine is present in seaweed. And when you're in the water, you're immersing yourself in iodine, which we know is so important, not only for breast health, but for thyroid health too. And unfortunately, we now have an iodine deficiency crisis. Just like we had with COVID, um, people were really, their immune systems weren't as healthy. We really have an iodine deficiency crisis now too. We're not going to the beach anymore. We're not even eating foods that have iodized products in it, like iodized salt, for example. We're really not having iodized salt anymore. Back 100 years ago, they added a small amount of iodine to salt, and
mm,
everyone used to use iodized salt, and we didn't have this deficiency. And now more people are going away from using salt in general, but if they're not using iodized salt, they're just using regular salt. And we're
yeah,
not really getting iodine from eating proper foods like seaweed or seafood. And we're not going to the beach as often. We're not spending that time in the water. And we have an increased risk of thyroid cancer, breast cancer, thyroid enlargement, and hypothyroid, and those are all linked to iodine deficiency. And I'm not saying iodine deficiency is the only reason why we're getting that,
yeah.
but it plays a big role, and we need to look into that too. It's all these little things that are happening as a result of us not being one with nature anymore.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't even put the connection together with the iodine, but that makes so much sense. And also
Yeah.
we're so depleted in so many other nutrients and
Mhm.
minerals that we are depleted in our soil too, like magnesium and
Another one. Yep.
yeah. So
Yeah.
um,
Vitamin D is
yeah,
another really big one.
yes,
Nobody's going out in the sun anymore. And
yeah,
yes, I'm not saying don't wear sunscreen, but it's okay to get a little bit of sun without sunscreen 10 minutes a day, in the early morning, or at least take vitamin D supplements. We're not doing
mhm,
that. And vitamin D plays a very important role in our bone health, but an even more important role in our gut health. It's a cofactor in some of the immune pathways. And this is why we saw vitamin D deficiency in COVID again linked to severity, because it does play a really important role with our beneficial bacteria, and it helps to regulate a lot of these immune system
yeah,
pathways.
yeah. Wow. So how can people reach out, get in touch with you? Maybe you could share your links, and I'd love to hear maybe about any other future projects. Are you going to come out with any more books on gut health? Yeah, please
Yeah.
share.
Sure. So, I mean, I have a heart for moms because as a mom of three, and you're a mom also, I think you have three also, right?
3 boys, three.
Yeah.
Well, they're grown up, but
Yes. Yes. Mine too. But I think moms, unfortunately, put so much into their families and a lot of times neglect themselves. But they're also the catalyst for a lot of things that happen. And so ideally, I want to have all moms read my book, obviously, but make a children's book where we start them young. The Gut Revolution for Children. We start them young to learn about beneficial bacteria in our gut and learn about how they really protect us, and kind of make it like remember the Popeye and the spinach,
yes,
but
yeah,
kind of something like that, where you have these guys in your gut and they're really superheroes, and they're helping you with a lot of important things like making you strong. So yeah, I would love to write a children's book version of the Gut Revolution. But yeah, I'd love to also to start doing more wellness initiatives like retreats, where again it's focused on moms because we always need a break. from our life, and we don't put ourselves first ever.
Yeah,
So we need to do that. Like have a wellness retreat where we go away for the weekend and we learn about our health, and we do things like grounding, for example, like you said, and just expose ourselves to healthy things.
that's wonderful. To start the foundation, really setting strong, healthy ways and protocols, and that's
Yeah,
so important, especially for the children to get involved with prepping and cooking, and that's the things I used
exactly.
to do with my boys, and they love to cook. And for a while they thought I was crazy, like, Mom, why are we eating this? And they're finally like, oh, they're
I
doing
get
it.
it.
They get it now, and
Yeah.
they're thanking me. I'm like,
Yeah.
yay! They finally
Finally.
get it. So,
Yeah,
and
I
then
know.
how can people connect with you? Can you give us
Yeah.
your website or whatnot? Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, I have an Instagram account that I post a lot of really good information on. It's called Dr. Christine B. It's doctor spelled out and then Christine B. I do also do wellness evaluations virtually if anybody's interested, and my website is fromwithinmedical.com. So yeah, just or reach out on LinkedIn even, or message me on Instagram. I'm always, happy to answer questions.
That's wonderful. And as you can see, I have a lot of tabs in here with all of information that really, it really hits home, and it's things. A lot of the important, contributions in here. I forget, and I'm like, okay, I have to remember to always use this as my go-to. So for all the viewers and listeners, and for people on YouTube, the Gut Revolution, if you have an opportunity, can you get this? I got this on Amazon. So
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think Walmart has it too. So
that's
yeah,
wonderful.
thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for taking the time out today. I really appreciate it. And I'd love for you to also be a guest. Every week I get on with about 100 fellow practitioners, functional people from all over the world. And they're so passionate, as we all are, about gut health. So again, I appreciate your time, and good luck with everything. And for everybody that's out there, go check out Dr. Bishara's book. It is The Gut Revolution. So thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much for having me.
And thank you to my viewers and listeners. Remember to get out there, keep it dirty, and ground with Mother Earth.
Yay.